Hey there everyone, Captain Media here with another video for you. I just want to remind everybody that I stream every Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time on Twitch. You can see the link down in the description below. Why don't you come and hang out with us? We like to talk about stream setups, troll me in the chat, or just hang out in general, so hope to see you there. So today we're going to be starting something new. We're going to be starting a new playlist on the channel, which is going to be mainly how to do your own overlay files in Blender. If you don't know what Blender is a free to use, free to download 3D animation software that allows you to create your own overlays. It allows you to do a lot of stuff, but mainly what we use them for, overlays, text effects, things of that nature. So we're going to start a channel that's going to start showing you how to make your own stuff and eventually get into advanced concepts to be pretty unique things as well. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're going to check this out. And we're going to start this off by making our own camera overlay for our Twitch streams. I will note that if you go down in the description, there's going to be a link to my Discord where I'm going to have all these files available for you to pick up and kind of modify yourselves or follow along with me in the video, so that way you can see how it's working. These are all, there's no money or anything. It's totally free. Just head over to the Discord, download the Blender file, open it, and then just follow along with what I'm doing. So obviously the first thing you want to do is go to blender.org, download the installer, install the software, get everything set up, your workspaces, all that good stuff, and then when you're ready to rock and roll, we will start creating our overlay. All right, so we will go ahead and we will open Blender, and it's going to start you off with a new basic project. So I generally just click out of this. I don't go into new generated, 2D animated, sculpting, whatever it is. I just click out of this and I start changing the stuff that's on the screen. So it's already pretty much set up for you. So here's this light, here's this object here. We'll go ahead and delete that, get rid of this light, and we will select the camera. We're gonna press Alt-R to reset the rotation and Alt-G to recenter its position. And then we will pick it up just a little bit so that way you can see what's on the X and Y plane here. Next, we're gonna drag from the lower left over to make a new plane. In here, we are going to hit 0 to get the camera view. We will turn off the grid lines and the tools. And then what we will do is we will set up our picture. So click the camera properties first. We're going to go down, navigate down to color management. And where it says view transformation, we're going to make that standard. Next, we will navigate up to film and make this transparent. After that, our next step, this is all optional to you, ambient occlusion, bloom. This is more or less cinematic kind of things. These are things that I like to do to make it look kind of more realistic. Now we'll go to output. We're going to make sure our frame rate and our resolution is correct. So one of the things that you can do for resolution is you can actually take a screenshot of your actual stream and where your camera is, superimpose it on like Photoshop or GIMP, and you can get the exact pixel size that you need to make, and you can input it into the resolution size to make the exact frame of your webcam border. I like to just make it at 720p, sometimes 1080p. It just depends on what I'm doing, and then I just scale it down from there. It just makes life a little bit easier. It's a little more taxing on your system to have a bigger file that's rendering more pixels, so this is clearly up to you. It's whatever you want to do. So for me, I decided to do this at 720p. It's a little bit less stress on the system, and the camera's so small, no one's gonna really notice the difference. All right, and then we're gonna go down, make sure it's at 30 frames per second. This just makes math easier. So that means we are gonna want this to run for about 10 seconds or so. So 10 times 30 is 300. Perfect. Now we also want to set up how we're going to render this. So we want this to run obviously as a video, not as a picture, as a still frame image. So we're going to go down to FFmpeg video. We are going to hit the encoding tab. For the container, we're going to set this to WebM. And for the video codec itself, we will make sure that we have highlighted WebM VP9. Medium quality, this is where you set your quality and how much your CPU is going to have to work to encode. So I usually set this to high quality, but medium quality is fine as well. And now we are ready to start creating what we got to do. So we will save this before we do anything else. We'll save this as YouTube test. And now we're ready. Over here, you see it still doesn't show the transparent background like you would see in Photoshop or GIMP. So simply hitting Z and then clicking rendered, and boom, that's going to be a rendered version of whatever it is that you're creating. And you can hit T to remove the toolbar, so that way you're just getting a viewport of what your final product will look like. All right, so now we are ready to start adding stuff to the 3D render viewport. So we are in object mode. First thing we'll do is hit, you can either right click or push Shift A to add something. We're going to add a plane. We're going to transform this to be just slightly bigger than the viewport, as you can see. There we go. So now we have our plane. So what we're going to do is we can actually zoom in to the viewport here to make it more exact, and just slowly decrement this down until it's approximately the same size as the viewport itself. Now, while holding Shift and clicking on the mouse wheel, you are able to move the viewport without changing the actual axis it's rotating on. So here we'll move this over and we will make this just the right size. So that'll do for now. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to cut out the inset, so where the camera will show through underneath. So in order to do that, we're going to hit Tab to enter edit mode. This is going to edit the object. And we're going to scroll down and find the Inset Faces tool. So we will click the Inset Faces tool, and you're going to be given this ball that you can move up and down to change how it's inset. So go to your liking, to the approximate area that you want to have cut out and what area you want to have showing. All right, that looks good to me. So next thing we're going to need to get is the knife tool. Okay, so we need to get rid of this face here. And as you can see, it's created new vertices for us to cut on. So we'll grab the knife tool. And we will select each one of these vertices. You'll hit enter, and then you can hit the delete key, and it's going to prompt you with what you want to delete. So we want to delete the faces. There we go. We now have a transparent camera border with the inset face cutout. So the next step in all of this is going to be setting up the color ramp that goes onto this. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. I'm going to show you a more complex way because it gives you far more control and ease of changing colors in the future if you decide to change your color scheme or whatever it is you want to do. So first step is make this a new material. And we can just rename it to whatever we want. We're going to call it Cam Border. Cam Border. Cam border frame. So now in the 3D viewport, we are going to go down to shader editor. All right, so here is currently what is set up on there. It is the principal BSDF, which is pretty much everything you see on the right side of your screen there, and then the material output, which is what is output to the material you have selected. So we're going to disconnect these, and we're going to make room for some more nodes. So we will move this over here. Okay. Now to add a node, you're going to press Shift A, just like adding a plane, and you can search for texture coordinate. All right, we will set this wherever you feel like setting it. There's no particular order. It's all based on what is selected to go to the next node. So you see here, generated normal UV, object camera, window reflection, or clicking the actual object itself. So the next thing that we're going to need to add, we'll hit Shift A again, and we are going to search for a mapping node. And we will just put this right next to the texture coordinate. And this is where you can set properties, movement properties, all these kinds of things. You can transform it, you can use vector information. It's really useful, especially if you're trying to do a gradient overlay that is constantly moving. All right, the next thing that we need to add is Shift A, is we are going to add a separate XYZ node. And this will be able to only move one axis of the color that we want to move. Next part is the tricky part, the math portion of this. So we have to use math nodes in order to keep the values where we want them to be. So we go Shift A, we're going to add a math node. We're actually going to be adding 3 of these. So we will Shift A again, add a second math node, and a third math node. So the first node we put needs to be a modulo node. And the second one down here on the right needs to be a less than node. We'll come back and we'll fill these values in as we start connecting everything together. As you can see on the left viewport there, nothing's happening, so it is pitch black. The frame is doing nothing at the moment. The next thing we need to add is a color ramp. So Shift A and look for color ramp. We'll set that down. And the last node we will need is an emission node. There we go. And that is all the nodes that we need to set them up in order. That way we can change the color ramp and change the gradient whenever we feel like changing it without having to change any keyframes or change any of the actual physical attributes of the frame itself, the material itself. So the first thing we'll do is go to texture coordinate. We're going to grab generated and send it over to vector. We'll then connect the vector to the separate XYZ. Right, so after we hooked up the separate XYZ, we need to connect the math node. So we're still moving on the Z axis. We'll connect that to the top of the modulo value. We'll take the modulo of output value to the top add value and the top less than value. We will take the value coming out of less than and add it to the second value portion of the add math node. Change the threshold of less than to 0. Then the final output value from add needs to go to the input for the color ramp. And we will set this up in a little bit. Then color goes to color on emission, and emission will then go to surface. And now you see changes in our viewport. So now we have the principal BSDF has been disconnected completely, and now we have completely set up a color ramp to replace whatever color is on the material itself. So here we can add our colors. We're just going to make sure that everything's the same color at the moment. And now we can add a couple of different color ramp values, and we can use math to separate these evenly. So we will set this one to be 0.25, or yep, 0.25. This one will be 0.5, and this one 0.75. Now this is the point where you can set your colors, you can do whatever you want to do. We're going to change this into just kind of a generic color, just so you can see how everything works. You click down here, you will pick whatever color you want it to be, click in there again. And if you want those colors to be the same, all you would have to do is click back in the color, click hex, copy that value. So Control C. Go over to this one, open it back up, paste the value, Control V. And that's it. That's how easy that would be. All right. And we might as well change these as well. Let's make these. Yeah, let's make them green. Why not? We'll make them green. Yeah, we can just go ahead and pick that again. Hex, copy the value. And we will paste it over onto this one. As you can see, changes are being made over here on the left in the viewport, but nothing is actually happening. So here's where we need to change some actual values. right, so what we need to do now is highlight the mapping node, the purple mapping node, and we're going to click down on properties. So this is where you're going to set the rotation of everything, the scale of it, the location, and this is how we're going to set the movement. So in rotation, I'm going to set the X value to 15 degrees and the Y value to 30 degrees. And then what we need to do is we'll make sure that we're down on the first frame, down on the bottom left, and we're going to go down to the Z axis, right click and say insert keyframe. Now we need to navigate all the way down here to the last frame. We're going to change this value to 1 or -1. We're going to right click, insert keyframes. Now if we go back and play from the beginning, you will see that the color ramp begins to move. Now, as you can see here, it starts to interpolate things in a slow kind of way. So it starts to move slowly and then picks up speed and then slows down before it stops again. This is totally fine if this is something that you want to have. I use it on some of my animations and I absolutely love it. But there are other times where I want it just to be constantly seamless. I don't want to see any kind of movement. So go over and make sure you have your mapping node selected. And we're going to go into the graph editor and change the interpolation of the animation. So we'll click here, go to graph editor. Once you're in the graph editor, you need to select the actual frame we've created, and we can zoom in here a little bit, and we can see there's a slight curve instead of it being a straight line. It's a slight curve, which is the speed. It's slow. It slowly speeds up and then slowly speeds back down. So we can drag and highlight all these keyframes, right click on interpolation mode and change it to linear. So now it'll be a constant speed when it starts and ends, and it will just look like it is constantly moving. We can check this. You can see for yourself. We'll hit play, and now it is a constant speed. All right, and as soon as we get over here to the end, it starts over. No skips, no seams, no anything. So this is the way that we want ours to run. So we can go back to the 3D viewport. You can see the material preview. Very nice. And as you can tell here, we're going to make sure it doesn't skip. Perfect. It just keeps on going. It will keep going infinitely as long as you check the loop box when we have it set up in Streamlabs or OBS, and we'll show that here in a second. So once we're happy with this, we'll make sure we hit save, and we go to render animation. So this will take a little bit. It really depends. The speed of this really depends on what the options you selected were. If you've set the ambient occlusion, if you've set screen space reflections, if you've changed zoom, it depends on a lot of stuff. Generally, these take a pretty short amount of time to make, especially since we're rendering them at a lower resolution. So once this is complete, we will go into Streamlabs and we will set this up as our webcam border. So we got our Streamlabs open. What we're going to do is I have a camera group set up here, and I'm going to add this to the group so that way it can be resized together, makes it easier to move around. So what we need to do is we need to add a new source, and since it's a video file, make it a media source. We'll make a new source instead, and we'll call this YouTube camera border. Add source. Make sure you click the loop option. We're going to go to browse, and it should pull up immediately your YouTube test border. Bingo. And done. So now we see here's our border, and since it's looping, it is going. So let's just do a general resize real quick. We will move this down into the camera group. Always ensure that it is on top of the camera source, so that way the camera appears behind it. And we'll do this a little bit bigger, because why not? And now what you need to do, grab your camera, make sure it's unlocked, put it inside the border, and resize it. So that is pretty much where you want it to be. Lock them down, and that's it. So you now have your camera border, and it is much better than a Photoshop camera border. So hopefully this was a fun and easy little project for you to do to kind of spice up your stream a little bit. We're going to have plenty more of these coming out, you know, backgrounds, text animation, even your own alerts, setting things up like that, transparency to make really cool looking effects. So definitely check back. The best way for you to do that is if you hit the like, subscribe, and bell icon, so that way you can be notified whenever I have new videos coming out on this. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I really like making stuff for you guys. So until I see you guys next time, game on.